As I was pondering topics for today's show, I had a what if scenario pop into my head. A, it involves BYU quarterbacks, and B, it involves a positive outcome for the BYU football program this fall. Well, what is it? We're talking about it next.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen and or view of the day, and a big thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast with zero sugar and a convenient portable sides. The perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB and receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5 Hour Energy today to order. All right, let's dive right in on today's show. Jake, what's that what if scenario you teased in the open of today's podcast? Here it is. What if Jake Retzlaff is exactly, and I mean exactly, what BYU needs to elevate itself in the Big 12 this fall? Now, elevate is a relative term. Elevate could mean BYU gets the bowl season, whether they're winning 6, maybe 7 games, or in your mind, maybe elevate means 9 or 10 wins. I'm using it in the whole sense that he brings BYU to the level where they show market improvement and turn some of the narrative about Jake into some positive. Let's be frank. There's a lot of people out there who are out on Jake Retzlaff, and I understand it. Just 3 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions, and 3 lost fumbles a season ago in the 4 games he started for BYU. There's not a lot out there in terms of the film that he showed that makes you think, okay, this guy is going to be the truth for BYU football. His completion percentage as a BYU Cougar, 50.4%. This is a fan base, you out there in Cougar Nation, who have watched quarterbacks complete 65, 70% of passes in a season, and that's the standard for high-level quarterback play. Quite frankly, Cougar Nation, you guys have been spoiled with the level of quarterback play going back quite literally decades at Brigham Young University. It's a really cool thing, and I don't think you need to essentially say, well, we're going to subsist on a guy who can complete half of his passes. You should expect more. The situation I had in my mind is it took me back to a conversation I had with a sitting Division I coach. I will not name that person because they have not given me authorization to use their name publicly when I talk about this. But this goes back to last season when Jake Retzlaff came on campus to BYU. Now, this person is still coaching in the Division I ranks. We were having a conversation about BYU's quarterback situation, and the comment that was made to me was, Jake, in speaking to me, Jake pointed at the other Jake, speaking of Jake Retzlaff, and said, that kid right there may have a funky throwing motion. And yes, Jake has a 3/4 kind of weird look, kind of fling it out there throwing motion that I think irks some people. He said, even with that funky throwing motion, that kid can make every throw required of him at the Division I level. And I kind of looked at the person like, really? And they're like, yeah, he can make literally every throw. This is a person who sat in multiple practices and watched Jake Retzlaff before he had ever taken a snap in a game and said, this kid can make every throw he needs to make at this level. If Jake Retzlaff can realize that potential, if he can be the guy who can attack all angles of the field for the BYU football program, and I'm talking about Jake Retzlaff, I'll also acknowledge right now that I am fully expecting him to be BYU starting quarterback against Southern Illinois on Saturday night. Aaron Roderick said it to us in the media yesterday that they have a, quote, clear-cut starter that separated themselves from the pack at the tail end of training camp. That's Jake Retzlaff in my mind. Now, obviously, Aaron is going to be out there saying, I want them to prepare for both quarterbacks. And I could very well see a situation. In fact, I'm expecting a situation where Gerry Bohanon sees some time on the field against Southern Illinois. But Jake Retzlaff, for all intents and purposes, is BYU's quarterback. Bringing him back to the point at hand here. If Jake Retzlaff really can realize his potential and become that quarterback that the sitting Division I coach told me could attack all parts of the field with his arm, that is going to open up BYU's offense to a level that is going to allow them to compete far better in the Big 12. I'm getting a lot of sense from a lot of people and players involved with this football program. And Connor Pace said it on yesterday's podcast. There is a quiet confidence and humility about this team. They know that they have a lot to prove. They know they have to go out there and do it on the football field. You can only talk so much and say that we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to be better, blah, 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 blah. You can say all the things you want until you put up. A lot of people are going to say, shut up. That's the situation I think the Cougars understand that they are in right now. So if Jake Retzlaff really can be the guy for BYU at quarterback and add his name to the list of high-level quarterbacks that BYU fans have been accustomed to watching, it's going to do a lot for BYU to have a guy like that on the field. Now, once again, this is a lot of talk. Now we need to see the action. We need to see the results. You can't have a 1-to-1 ratio of touchdowns to interceptions to lost fumbles as a quarterback. That's not going to get it done at BYU. You need to be 2-to-1 in terms of touchdowns to turnovers at minimum to really elevate what I believe is a BYU football program that is in need of elevation. A lot of people out there are thinking BYU is going to be awful this season. They've been picked 13th in the preseason poll. There's a lot of people out there that say BYU just ain't it. And it's maybe not, they're not going to be it for the time being. A high-level quarterback emerging, in this case, Jake Retzlaff, would help BYU, I think, have a great opportunity to impress a lot of people. And I think, frankly, win over his detractors and the haters that don't believe he can get it done for the BYU football program. So there is a lot riding on this season for Jake Retzlaff. There's no if, and, or but about it. If he truly wants to be the quarterback in his mind that he believes he can be, and his stats from the junior college ranks were absolutely elite, and there's a big reason why BYU's coaching staff believed in him and brought him in as a junior college transfer. If he can really accomplish all that he, in his mind, I'm sure, is setting out to do, and accomplishes all that maybe you have in your mind set out for him, that could elevate BYU to the postseason, and maybe a little bit even more than that, because I am fully expecting the talent base around the quarterback of BYU. I'm talking running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, offensive line. I'm expecting everything around whoever it is. And like I said, I'm expecting it to be Jake. I'm expecting all those position groups to be upgraded and performing at a higher level this fall, therefore giving the quarterback a bigger opportunity to do more and elevate the BYU football program. Maybe I'm wrong about it. Maybe Jake is who he is. Maybe he is that guy who gets by on a wing and a prayer and may have to eventually switch over, and I guess not switch over, but switch to Gerry Bohanon if he isn't ineffective. But what if Jake Retzlaff is the truth for the BYU football program? Could be a lot of fun this fall if it really comes out that way. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about a guy who proved it on the football field and now is teaching his proteges to go out there and prove it. Jernaro Gilford, a great conversation with a guy that I think has been absolutely incredible for the BYU football program, both as a player and now as a coach. He talks a lot about what to expect from Southern Illinois from the defensive perspective for BYU, but also talks about what to expect from his position group, speaking of BYU's cornerbacks on defense. And we'll get into that conversation coming up next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. I screwed that up there. But nonetheless, 5 Hour Energy is here for you guys to give you the boost you need no matter what time of day it might be. A lot of us like to crash in the afternoon. I can admit to it. I work early mornings, and by mid-afternoon, I'm usually pretty gassed. 5 Hour Energy can help you get through that wall, bust it down, and power through the rest of your day. The best part is it is there for you guys. Maybe if you're watching sports coming up this weekend, we've got a full slate of college football games. Not too far off, we're going to have a full slate of NFL games. If you need to get through those days where you're watching all the sports, I know it doesn't seem like you should be losing that much energy sitting on the couch, but it can't take it out of you. You can take a 5 Hour Energy, stay alert the entire time you're watching the game. If you're going to the BYU game on Saturday, for example. So check it out, my friends. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. 5 Hour Energy has flavors galore. Watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, you name it, they've probably got it for you guys. They got a taste for everybody. Try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12 or 24 pack with a customized list of flavors. You choose the flavors and it's delivered right to your door. So today, I want you guys to go over to 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5hourenergy.com and get some 5 Hour Energy product ordered today. You can use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB and receive 20% off your order. The offer is only available until September 30th on one order, and it cannot be used with other promotions, and the code is not good on subscription orders either. So go to 5hourenergy.com today to place that order. Use that promo code LOCKEDONCFB and get on today with your friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being with us. I want to remind you, if you've not done so already, check out the Locked On College Football Podcast. It's got you guys essentially the breakdown of the season ahead. You want to know about the ASCC, the ACC, the Big Ten, or in BYU's case, the Big 12. They've got full season previews for all those teams, as well as all the latest news when it comes to college football from the 30,000-foot view. Check it out. It's Locked On College Football, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, it is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's talk BYU defense. Jernaro Gilford has been at BYU for quite a while now and has been, quite frankly, I think one of the more underrated coaches for BYU overall. There is a reason why when BYU cleaned house with the defensive staff 2 off seasons ago, Jernaro was the only coach retained. He's an elite recruiter. He connects well with his players. And the final thing is he knows how to get the best out of his guys. He's got to prove it more than I think a lot of the seasons in the recent past for BYU, with cornerbacks that are on the roster for BYU, plentiful in numbers, but a little bit short on experience outside of Jakob Robinson. So what is Coach G, as a lot of people like to call him, what is he expecting from BYU's cornerbacks? But more importantly, what does he expect to see from Southern Illinois on Saturday night? Well, they'll tell you coming up right now, right here on Locked On Cougars.
How good does it feel to finally be, it's game week, you have a game this Saturday?
Yeah. Oh, man, I can't even, I'm excited. I'm too excited just to know that we finally get to face somebody else after facing our wideouts for the last, what has been 8 months, since spring ball and all the off season and stuff like that. So it's finally time to face somebody else. So.
When it gets to this time of the year, I know that you were a player, obviously. Does it change at all as a coach? Do you have the same anticipation?
I do.
Okay.
Personally, yeah. I still get the feeling like I'm a player. I'm like, okay, we got 3 or 4 days away.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm absolutely excited.
You're counting it down, obviously.
Oh, for sure.
Now, obviously it's an FCS game, Southern Illinois, but they've got a very strong reputation. They had a good run in the playoffs a season ago. Can you tell me what you know about them, what you see on film?
Oh man, FCS, a powerhouse. They've won three out of the last 4 FBS games.
Yeah.
So and coaching at the FCS level, I know how those kids are going to prepare. I know what the coaches are telling them. So they'll be fired up, ready to play. They beat Northern Illinois last year.
Yes.
They went into
Northwestern.
Big Ten country and beat Northwestern. Yeah. You know what I mean? So definitely not a slouch. Definitely a great team, and we'll have our hands full for sure.
How many conversations have you guys had with the guys about the fact that they've had success against your level of competition?
Oh, every single day.
Okay.
Every single day. The guys know, and it's been a blessing and a privilege that guys like myself, Fessy, Jay, Coach Anna, Kalani, A-Rod, we've all been at the FCS level.
Yeah.
So that's a blessing, because now the guys know how we talk to our players then to get up for this big game. Just to kind of tell those guys, man, if you play good or if you get a win, this puts us on the map. National game against BYU in a 65,000 seat stadium. It's nothing better as far as that goes.
Now, I know that Jacob's kind of established himself on one side of this. The depth chart shows an or between Marque Collins and Mory Bamba. Is that going to be a legitimate rotation on Saturday between those two?
Yeah, those two have been going back and forth for a while. So that's the plan, to play them both, play them all, and just let them go. Let them do their thing.
Now, Jacob's a guy that named team captain this year. He's really come into his own, it feels like, and talking with him. You can tell he's very confident. Where have you seen the most growth from him individually?
Just maturity.
Okay.
Being more of a vocal leader, because he's naturally quiet by nature, but he leads by example. You know what I'm saying? But now he's forced to be more vocal and talk more because he's one of my two seniors. You know, him and Mark. Mm-hmm. So the way he watches film, the way he holds everybody else accountable. So those are just some things that he's worked on as far as the offseason, and it's paid big dividends for him.
Most BYU fans probably don't know much about Mark. Obviously, coming in from Weber State and having dealt with the injuries he's dealt with. What can you tell us about him as a player?
A pure corner, you know. Very, very high IQ guy. Just like all the other guys that we got from Weber that's been under Jay for 4 years. All those guys coming here with the high IQ, and that's kudos to Coach Jay. How he gets guys prepared, how he coaches, the way he teaches them concepts and all that stuff. So kudos to Jay and all those guys at Weber for absolutely getting them ready. I can't take the credit for what he's done, before. Absolute baller, a guy who has ball skills, not afraid to mix it up. So I'm definitely excited to see him play Saturday.
How far has Mory come this essentially summer/training camp?
Oh, night and day, man. Just as far as size, speed, a feel for the game, and I think for him it was a blessing for him to actually graduate, because now he don't have to worry about school as much. And if you know his mom, it's all about academics. So that was something that was heavy on him. And he majored in business. So everybody who knows BYU, you know, business it's no slouch here. So he had to kind of go through all that, and it's been a blessing ever since he's done and walked the stage. He's been able to focus more on football now. So I think that was the drastic change in everything.
Now, Evan Johnson's name keeps popping up in conversations. What is it about him? Where's the leap he's taken essentially to make himself a part of this mix?
You know what? Taking advice from the vets, being able to play with guys like Jakob, Mark, and Mory, seeing them do it every single day. A guy who's hasn't played DB for long. He got here and started playing, but a guy who has great size, great speed, ball skills, and not afraid to mix it up. So you'll probably see him Saturday as well. Okay.
I want to ask you about your two youngsters as well, Trey Alexander, Jonathan Kabeya. They're on that depth chart. They are true freshmen. What kind of role can you expect from them this season overall?
Yeah. You know what? It's kind of wait and see type deal. Okay. They're both right there. I mean, at the end of the day, they're both a play away from being in. So we got to get them prepared. We just have to. Trey presents a problem because he is a tall, lengthy guy with great speed, and Kabeya is just a natural football player. Very, very high IQ guy who knows the game, knows the route concepts, knows where to be, and makes the plays when they're presented.
All right, last thing from me, Coach. What's the best part about playing in LaVell Edwards Stadium?
The Rock, easy. For me. Okay. For me, the Rock. As soon as I walk out that tunnel, gotta love it. Hope they're there in the game. Rock, we love you. Come out, support. Go Cougs.
That is Jernaro Gilford, and Jernaro Gilford loves himself some BYU student section, a.k.a. The Rock. He is looking forward to it. I think all of us are looking forward to it. It should be a raucous environment inside LaVell Edwards Stadium on Saturday night as BYU kicks off the season. And fingers crossed that BYU's cornerbacks, obviously expecting to see Jakob Robinson prominently out there, Mory Bamba, also Marque Collins. Hopefully all of them have a good showing and they can go out there and prove that the faith that their coach has in them, and that even extends down, like I said, to some of the younger guys, Evan Johnson, Trey Alexander, Jonathan Kabeya, just a few of the names we talked about. I think it gives some hope for all of them. One note, I'm sure some of you will come up with this in the show notes, if I do, not show notes, but comments. What about Marcus McKenzie, Jake? What I understand about Marcus McKenzie, he's still working his way back from injury. Now, I would expect to see him on the field maybe in some capacity on special teams on Saturday night, but he is still getting caught up. I think once he is fully healthy and 100% full go, you can expect that McKenzie, speaking of Marcus McKenzie, will be in the mix at cornerback for BYU, but for the time being, he's got ground to make up as he returns from injury. All right, once again, a big thank you to Jernaro Gilford and big what I'm trying to say, a big thank you to him, but more importantly, good luck to him and his guys. Because once again, it's a unit that's got a lot of bodies in it at cornerback that's got a lot to prove. They got a lot of inexperience there, and they got to obviously grow up real quick, as he talked about, but we'll see how it all goes starting Saturday night at LES. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we're going to finish up today's show. When BYU plays in a season that ends with the number 4, going back quite literally 50 years, crazy and fun things happen. Let me explain. Coming up next as you roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is here for you guys to help you guys have fun this football season, but more importantly, got an impressive offer because they are America's #1 sports book. And to all of our Locked On Cougars listeners, you have an incredible offer that's coming out to you now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers, all you got to do is bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket via YouTube and YouTube TV. Think about that. Free NFL Sunday Ticket so you can watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. It's all with the YouTube TV base plan. And the best part is all you need is a Google account, a current form of payment, and of course, you can cancel at any time. It's a 3-week free trial. It's all available from your friends over at FanDuel. The best part is with football season here, if you want to have some fun with sports betting, well, there's no better place than do it with our friends at FanDuel. An incredible app that's super easy to use. You can place your bets and you're on your way having fun watching the games, and only enhances, it feels like, the viewer experience because you're more locked in on some of these games you may not otherwise be. So once again, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and download America's #1 sportsbook app today. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today and take advantage of this offer from our friends at FanDuel. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Factor Meals. Now, Factor Meals is here for you guys. We're all crazy busy, it feels like, especially this time of year for myself. Back to school. I'm in the heart of football season. Factor Meals are here with no-mess meals, meet your wellness goals, but also make it as easy as 2 minutes, and you have a well-prepared meal in front of you. That's the incredible part about it. 35 different meals, more than 60 different add-ons to choose from every single week. You always have new flavors to explore with our friends over at Factor. Crush your wellness goals, of course, with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients you can trust. You can customize it to fit whatever your needs are. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. And once again, like I said, these meals are ready in 2 minutes in the microwave. That's the incredible part about it. So head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege50. That's 50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LOCKEDONCollege50 at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. And it's all courtesy of your friends over at Factor Meals. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, please sign up for our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. It's a great way to stay up to date on everything going on with BYU sports. I'm sending out messages. The best part is you get them via text messages. I get much more direct than that. No message board or website to have to go log into to see what the latest is. It comes to you in a text message. You can fire back with your thoughts. We have one-on-one conversations. It's a great way to interact with the show. I'm having a great time with all of our members of the Insiders Group so far, and hope you guys will consider joining it today. Link is in the show notes below. You can just search it. It says Locked On, join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. So hyperlink there. 14-day free trial, $5 a month afterwards to continue as a member of the group. And I think you'll find it well worth it as we enter the BYU football season. All right, before we go on today's show, I got an email earlier this week about the 1974 BYU football team being honored August 31st. That's Saturday at BYU's game against Southern Illinois. They're going to be honored as the first team to play in a bowl game for BYU. Remember, back in 1974, that was year 3 of the LaVell Edwards era. And BYU had a crazy season that year. If those of you who are old enough to remember this, BYU started the season with 3 straight losses, then got a tie at Colorado State. And so you're 0-3-1 on the year, and you're like, oh, geez, more of the same. Because this is back in the era where BYU, the first 50 years of their football history, were not very kind to the Cougars. But then they turned it around and started reeling off win after win after win. They actually, in fact, won, I think, 7 straight wins to win the WAC title and punch their ticket to the first ever bowl game in BYU football history. That would be the Fiesta Bowl when they took on now Big 12 member, their fellow Big 12 member, Oklahoma State down there in Tempe, Arizona. BYU did lose that game to Oklahoma State 16-6. The Cougars were ranked 17th in that game, but it was a big deal for BYU, and they're being honored on Saturday night. Well, when I saw this release come to my email, I'm like, what? BYU's had a lot of good seasons, a lot of crazy moments in seasons that end with the number 4. Remember, 1974, first WAC championship, if I recall correctly, and also that first bowl berth in BYU football history. Well, 10 years later, we all know about this. The 1984 national championship season, that trophy, or the trophies, I should say, are all over the student-athlete building down there in Provo. Really cool thing to have BYU have a national championship in their trophy case. No matter what some of the detractors might say, show us the hardware if you're going to believe that you have a national championship. Hint, hint. School 40 miles to the north, but hey, nonetheless, 1984. Then we moved to 1994. Now, 1994, I think it gets overlooked for how solid of a season it was for BYU. BYU finished the year ranked 18th in the country. They were 10-3 overall in that season. And the crazy thing about this is, remember, BYU beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame in that game. Jamal Willis, that touchdown will be forever iconic. Winning that game in Notre Dame against the 17th ranked Fighting Irish, 21-14. BYU ended up getting ranked after that, never fell out of the rankings the rest of the season. They did lose to Utah that season, so a number 20 versus number 21 matchup. But then the Copper Bowl down there in Tucson, Arizona. Remember, BYU absolutely beat the brakes off a hapless Oklahoma Sooner squad and won that game 31-6. John Walsh was the quarterback. Just crazy, crazy stuff for BYU, and a very underrated season. Some high moments in 1994. Now, even the 2004 season, which we all know 2004 was amidst that Gary Croton run of futility that ultimately cost him his job. The 2004 season, it may not have had the record that matches up with these other seasons. Because like I said, you have a WAC championship in 74. You got a national championship in 84. You have a 10-3 season in 94 with big wins over two of the blue bloods of the sport. Well, 2004 had a different feeling for it because BYU welcomed in the schools like Notre Dame. So 10 years after they beat Notre Dame in Notre Dame came to Provo for that season opener. They also welcomed number 1 USC to Provo. Remember, this is the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush era USC, Pete Carroll on the sidelines. They played at Boise State in that season as well. It was a pretty vaunted schedule for BYU in 04, but I think the high moment of 04 for me will be that season opener against Notre Dame. Remember, Todd Watkins, Austin Collie balling out for BYU. They win that game 20-17. It was a crazy, crazy scene. There were Notre Dame fans all over the place. I vividly remember, this is kind of just a funny aside, that my brother and I were at that game against Notre Dame, sitting in the south end zone, if I recall correctly. I'm in the southeastern part of the east stands now I think about it. Really up high, nosebleed type seats. But we had some Notre Dame fans in front of us who were very friendly, turned around and introduced themselves. But about midway through the first quarter, my brother just finished drinking a water bottle. This guy turns around and says, "Hey, can I have that water bottle?" to my brother? And at that point, 04, I would have been, I was a 17-year-old senior in high school. And my brother turns, he's like, "Yeah, sure, you can have it." Guy takes it, and we're sheltered Utah County boys from Orem, Utah. This guy takes a big wad of chewing tobacco, puts in his mouth, and starts spitting into that bottle. And it's gross. I don't condone chewing tobacco at all because I think it's just a nasty, nasty thing. The look of shock on my brother's face watching this guy spit that yellow, green, brown liquid into that water bottle will forever make me chuckle. It's one of those moments indelibly kind of locked into my mind. But that Notre Dame win, I think, was a big one for BYU. It had a lot of us out there thinking that maybe, just maybe BYU turned a corner after some really rough years in 02 and 03 for Gary Croton. But as we found out, it was not to be that way. BYU did have a chance to make it to bowl eligibility that season, late in the season, lost to New Mexico in a disappointing one, 21-14. And then obviously Utah with that loss at the end of the season. But that 04 season had just a really, really solid home slate of games, which brings us to our final one, 2014. Now, 2014, similar to 04, the result of the season may have not been the way you wanted to go, but BYU started that season absolutely on fire. Remember, Taysom Hill was at the peak of his powers. They went to Texas, absolutely blew the doors off the Longhorns, 41-7. Taysom Hill is being talked about as a Heisman Trophy candidate. And then, of course, they play against Utah State on that Friday night in early October, and he gets injured. He's out for the season. Then BYU went on a 4-game losing streak. And then in the month of November, the schedule lightened up a little bit, but BYU ends up reeling off 4 straight wins. Christian Stewart, remember, was the quarterback who outdueled now NFL quarterback Jared Goff in that regular season finale at Cal, a 42-35 barn barn burner of a game. BYU ends up 8-4 that season, then played in that Miami Beach Bowl, losing in overtime to Memphis. But every one of these seasons that have ended in 4 have had really high moments, big wins over blue blood type programs. So what is 2024 going to hold for BYU? Well, if history is to be believed, it means something big could be coming for the Cougars. Now, I'm not going to proclaim that BYU is going to go out and reel off 13, 14, 15 straight wins and win a national championship a la 1984. But could they be like the 1974 team, which was left for dead after essentially the first month of the season? Once again, they were 0-3-1 after their first 4 games. Brutal scenes. But they ended up reeling off 7 straight wins and winning the WAC title. Could BYU have that type of a season in them? Could they have a 94 type season where it kind of gets overlooked, but it was an overall very solid season for the BYU football program in their history? I'm not sure what to expect, but I'm also not going to count out anything based on the history of these seasons that end in 4 for BYU. It's 50 years. You go back 50 years to 74. Crazy things have happened every time the season has ended with a number 4. Could BYU get big wins over the likes of Kansas State, Arizona, Oklahoma State? Heaven forbid that vaunted Utah team that's the Big 12 favorite this year. Could they go and scuttle some of the dreams for Utah fans up there at Rice-Eccles Stadium? Well, if you want to make them like the 74, 84, 94, 04, or 2014 teams, well, the opportunity is out there for you, and we'll ultimately see what happens. But interesting, just history lesson looking back at the BYU history books. All right. That's what I got for you guys on this Thursday edition of the show. Coming up tomorrow, it's our first game day preview edition of the show. We're talking about Southern Illinois, what to expect from the Salukis as BYU takes them on in the season opener. What will it take for BYU to handle their business and get to 1-0? We'll talk about that. We'll also catch up with BYU offensive lineman Waylon Lapuaho. He will be our special guest on tomorrow's podcast as well. So until then, thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you to all of you who are every day with us as well. And until mañana, have a great rest of your day right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.